Together with Fidel Castro, he'd been the architect of the Cuban Revolution. Later, he was Ministry of Industry and President of the National Bank. Then, in March 1965, he abandoned responsibilities, possessions, and loved ones, and went underground to join liberation movements in Africa and South America. For 2 years, no one knew where he was. In the summer of 1967, the CIA discovered he'd entered Bolivia in disguise and with fake documents, and that he was leading a group of ultra-loyal guerrillas. 3 months later, an entire generation was abruptly shaken from its dreams when it learned that the most famous revolutionary of all time, Ernesto Che Guevara, was dead. The Bolivian army couldn't have imagined that by lying about his death, by hiding his corpse, they would contribute to enhancing the legend of their Che. Bolivia, summer 1967. Che Guevara was thought to be operating in the south of the country. The United States Army, Green Berets, and members of the CIA took on the task of training army recruits in anti-guerrilla techniques. The Bolivian army suffered heavy losses at the hands of Che's group, which was believed to be numerous and well-armed. The truth, as it later turned out, was quite different. Major Ayoroa's troops took Che to the village school of La Higuera. The Bolivian authorities put out false information about Che being killed in combat. At the time, he was very much alive. No one wanted to take responsibility for his execution. The soldiers took photographs of him. For more than 30 years, they would hide these pictures, showing the expression in Che's eyes during the last moments of his life. And the role that both superpowers played in South America.
Выразить большую благодарность за эту теплую встречу и провозгласить за дружбу между народами Советского Союза и Соединенных Штатов Америки. I want to thank you all very sincerely for this very warm welcome, and may I say, salute friendship between the Soviet and American peoples.
When Johnson and Kosygin met at Glassboro, Che Guevara had just been located in southeast Bolivia. 3 months later, he was a corpse. Che Guevara was not the unwitting victim of this climate of peaceful coexistence between the Soviet Union and the United States. During the first phase of the Cuban Revolution, Che had been the most vocal advocate of an alliance with the Soviet Union. That changed towards the end of his life, when he developed a very critical position. His last public appearance was in Algiers on February 24th, 1965. On that occasion, he criticized the Soviet Union yet again for its complicity in imperialist exploitation. Socialist countries, he said, should not charge third world countries market prices, thus forcing them into debt. They should also stop selling arms. Weapons should be given away freely to oppressed peoples to allow them to liberate themselves. The Soviet Union was infuriated by the speech, which it saw as a slap in the face. Most communist parties in Latin America were pro-Soviet. They could not support Che's struggle. And Castro, who was politically and economically dependent on the Soviet Union, had no choice but to bow to his paymasters. Che's plans and ideas were sacrificed to political pragmatism. At the end of the 1980s, things changed. Castro knew the Soviet Union was close to collapse. He no longer felt obliged to accept the embargo on the figure of Che Guevara. On the contrary, he needed Che to revamp the image of the revolution.
In Bolivia, soldiers are searching for the remains of legendary leftist fighter Che Guevara, more than a quarter of a century after his death. On Friday, they began digging near a remote airstrip southeast of La Paz, where two retired army generals say he's buried. It's believed that Guevara was buried in a mass grave with 4 of his followers.
Los científicos supieron desde el primer momento que los restos encontrados en Valle Grande eran del Che y sus compañeros caídos en octubre de 1967. 30 años de la historia de la guerrilla en Bolivia se van para Cuba.
Los 4 restos que se encontrarían en esta fosa desde el punto de vista de los cubanos serían lo correspondiente al comandante Ernesto Che Guevara, los de Alberto Fernández Montes de Oca, Orlando Pantoja Tamayo y René Martínez Tamayo.
Che está librando y ganando más batallas que nunca. Gracias, Che, por tu historia, tu vida y tu ejemplo. Gracias por venir a reforzarnos en esta difícil lucha que estamos liderando hoy para salvar las ideas por las cuales tanto luchaste, para salvar la revolución, la patria y las conquistas del socialismo, que es parte realizada de los grandes sueños que albergaste.
Ten years after officially being buried, Che is more alive than ever. In the stylized image of Che Guevara, the younger generation has rediscovered a symbol of strength, justice, consistency, and intransigence. Yet the ideas that characterized the last part of his life and that led to his death at only 39 years of age, are still largely unpublished and unknown.